Welcome to the American Academy of Grief Counseling's video on the counseling story itself. So this is part 6 in our series of basic counseling skills, and many of the skills that we have discussed have culminated to this point in helping the counselor discover the client's story and allowing that story to transform into a healthy and productive narrative that leads to a person's full recovery in regards to dealing and coping with whatever issue or emotion that is tormenting them. So when we come across a client for the first time, there is something that needs to exist within the counselor. The idea that, yes, we want to believe what the client is saying. Yes, we want to be there. We want to be empathetic, and we don't want to initially cast out any falsehoods that might be told to us. Instead, we want to be there and we want to listen. But at the same time, we know in all reality, even innocently, that there is going to be the story versus the real story. And what do I mean by that? Well, every story told by an individual, even many times out of complete truth or perceived truth, they are subjective. There are certain factors that might be missing from the story, especially told in the heat of the moment, or how one just perceives it from one perspective, and there might be other perspectives. So you might have an individual telling the story who wants to vindicate oneself. We might have one who might want to tell their story because they're confused. And as they're telling the story, they don't have all the facts. And you might have one who's telling the story in purpose of hiding other things. So it is up to, after the initial sessions, for the counselor to eventually help the client see the real story. Now, some clients might be more close to the real story than others, while others may be very far from it, and it's going to take some type of empathetic confrontation to help remove the blinders, which do exist within many of these stories, and to remove the one-sided values or any of the various discrepancies. It's important, though, to understand that while these stories that the client tells are subjective, different cultures also express stories differently. You'll have some clients that divulge a lot of information, and you have others that might be more uh, more restrictive in what they are sharing. Their mouths may be more zipped. Others may give unnecessary information, and they may need to be properly tracked and guided to stay on the theme of what is being discussed. Now, some stories may be very severe. They may carry a lot of trauma within them, and they may require, if you're not licensed, to refer, or if you are licensed, to assess the crisis that the person is in, and it might involve more acute or severe reaction to that. So ultimately, though, the key is to help the client discover the real story. And this is through empathetic confrontation when necessary, again, helping remove blinders or identifying discrepancies so that the client can discover the real story, to identify the true problems, and find ways to heal and transform. And we use a variety as counselors of skills discussed in the previous videos on how to help the client see these things. So helping the client embrace the right story is the key. And when the client finally does identify the real story, he or she is able to move forward and create the right story. Hence, the client embraces the idea of change, and the client is ready to make the necessary changes to make the right story. Egan points out that this process involves 3 stages. First, the telling of the story so that it can transform eventually into the real story. Second, helping the client design and set forth problem managing goals and skills. And then to set these goals into motion by creating various strategies to meet those goals. So in that way, the client is able to move forward and tell the right story from there on. Now, narrative therapy is a type of therapy that helps cultivate the right story into the new story. Narrative therapy looks to transform problematic stories of an individual's life into more productive and healthy ones. It involves first putting together the narrative. That involves attending the client, listening, observing, offering feedback. Then it involves externalizing the problem from the self. Many times, individual clients, the self, feel that the problem is part of themselves, but it's important to take the problem out and to put it aside so that they can view it and see that the problem is not something that exists within them, but it is an external factor. Following this is a deconstruction period of the story and its various problems, its various parts, and to identify these parts and then how to overcome it. And that is finding new goals and strategies, as listed on the previous slide, to create better outcomes and to retell, quote unquote, the story itself in a healthy way. Now, many clients find that this is a very empowering therapy, and it gives the individual the chance to retell the story in a healthy way. And of course, as in the previous videos we've watched in this series, many of these skills can help individuals form better resiliency to carry out these new stories that they're about to partake upon and tell. And there are also other skills that help them reach the goals that they need to do to make a permanent and productive change. Below is our grief counseling certification, as well as our Christian counseling certification. There's links to check those out. These programs are offered for licensed as well as unlicensed human service professionals, as well as those in the healthcare fields. We also offer stress management, anger management, crisis intervention, to name a few. So there's numerous behavioral health programs that you can check out. Our phone number is 330-652-7776, and our email is info@aihcp.org. And also below are our references. So start learning as a counselor how to use the micro skills we've discussed to help a client discover the real story and then embark upon the right story. I'd like to thank you for listening and have a good day.